Oh, the webinar now there. Okay. Yes. Good afternoon, everyone. We are starting after 1 to 2 minutes. We are just allowing the participant. We just open the Zoom for the participant, and they are coming now. Thank you very much for coming to this important session. Please, if you have any question, you can write it in the Q&A. You can also raise your hand. Good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon.
In the meantime, please make yourself comfortable and ensure you have a good internet connection, and also that your laptop, tab, phone has sufficient charge. Please also during the webinar, type your question in the Q&A feature, and it will be answered later during the Q&A session. You can also raise your hand to speak later during the slot for the questions and answers. And also kindly know that the webinar will be recorded, and also it is streamed through our YouTube live stream, and the presentations, they will be available and downloadable after 12 hours. All the recording and the presentations are available after 12 hours. Thank you all. And on behalf of our Executive Director, Engineer Silvista Matemo, the Executive Director of the Nile Basin Initiative Secretariat, I would like to thank all the panelists and welcome all the participants on this webinar about applying analytical and monitoring tools to improve climate change adaptation in the agricultural sector. The Nile Basin Initiative, in collaboration with the government of Uganda, is organizing a series of webinars in the 7th Nile Basin Development Forum. The Science Policy Practice Dialogue is organized to bring together Nile Basin Initiative with its stakeholders from Nile Basin countries and around the world. The theme of this forum is deepening Nile cooperation, accelerating the achievement of SDGs in changing climate. The goal of the 7th Nile Basin Development Forum is to enhance transformation processes in projects that will contribute to the Nile Basin Initiative shared vision, which is to achieve sustainable socioeconomic development through the equitable utilization of and benefit from the common Nile Basin water resources. The theme under this 7th Nile Basin Development Forum has different kinds of themes, which are adaptation to climate change, water resources management, basin investment plan, groundwater, water quality, and transboundary water governance. The Nile Basin is one of the most critical transboundary water basins in Africa, with the River Nile playing a crucial role and source for most of economic and social activities for the countries in the Eastern and Northeastern Africa. The climate is changing, putting a range of natural and human systems at risk, and promoting and prompting communities, governments, and organizations to step up their effort to adapt. That said, it is equally facing adverse effect of climate change, which is expected to worsen in the future should little or no effort be done to avoid the current trends. So welcome to this webinar. Let us have fruitful presentations and discussions, and let us work together to incorporate these findings in our decision-making River Basin agenda. Thank you. Thank you very much. And again, I would like to remind you about the title of this session. It's about applying analytical and monitoring tools to improve climate change adaptation in the agricultural sector. Amy will moderate this session, will moderate a series of presentations, and also will moderate the Q&A session and also a panel discussion. Thank you. Thank you very much. The floor is yours, Dr. Abdul Karim and Dr. Girma. Back to you.
Thank you, Dr. Mudassir. Good afternoon, everyone. So welcome to the second session of this webinar, applying analytical and monitoring tool to improve climate change adaptation in the agricultural sector. My name is Girma Ibrahim. I'm a researcher at International Water Management Institute based in Addis, and I will be serving as a moderator for this afternoon session. So the objective of this session today is to identify the way in which agriculture sector could adapt to climate change, and also identify the emerging technologies and the best practices for climate change adaptation in the agricultural sector. So this afternoon, you will be hearing a series of presentations across different case studies after the keynote speech, which is going to be delivered by Dr. Abdul Karim. Every speaker will have like 10 minutes for their presentation, and then we'll have Q&A after all presentation is completed. Just to get started, I would like to invite Mr. Vincent from Nile Basin to give his welcome remark and introduction to the webinar. Vincent, over to you.
Yes, thank you. Thank you very much. Maybe Vincent, you would like to say something? Sorry.
Or should I go directly to the keynote?
Yes,
or?
you can go directly. Yes, thank you.
Okay, thanks. So, okay, moving on now, I would like to invite Dr. Abdul Karim, the country representative for IWMI East Africa office, to give his keynote speech. Dr. Abdul Karim has over 35 years of experience in the field of river basin planning and management, integrated analysis, policy work, and program management. So Dr. Abdul Karim is widely known water resource expert. Before he joined IWMI, he was executive director of the Nile Basin Initiative, and has participated in many different programs, and as well he was also teaching in the university in the past. So Dr. Abdul Karim, the floor is yours. You can give your keynote speech. You have 10 minutes.
Okay, Dr. Girma, thank you so much. Can you see my slide?
Yes, make it full screen, please.
All right. Oh, okay, thank you. Well, you've given me 10 minutes. I hope I'll be able to manage within 10 minutes. So my objective really is a little bit of set the tone for discussion for the session as a whole. It's a very important area. So I would like to touch first briefly what we know about, climate change impact in East Africa, especially. I'll be basing my talk on the recent IPCC report from 2022. And then a little bit of highlight about key implications for agriculture sector, because that really is the context for our discussion of analytic tools. And then a bit about the purpose for monitoring or analytic tools, application of analytic tools. I'll give you some case studies. I'll not go into the details because some of the case studies I'm going to talk about mention will also be covered by one of the presenters, namely Naga. Then probably I will highlight few my suggestions how to really scale those interventions, those examples or tools. Now, probably many of you might have seen the IPCC report, a very big report, and I went into the Africa section, especially on the implication for water, implication for agriculture sections. So what you see on the left-hand side of the picture really is the projected temperature rise. This is when you talk about impacts of climate change, of course, we are interested in magnitude and the direction of change and then the level of confidence. For various reasons, some of the projections are not high confidence, especially in Africa because of several reasons, among which is lack of monitoring data is one. So regarding temperature, there's consensus about the rise that is going to increase. Then regarding precipitation, obviously, there is a low confidence, especially on the direction. All right, so this is important, especially when you talk about monitoring. So we don't really know exactly whether it's going to rise or decrease and by how much. So there is very low agreement on direction of change. For example, we have different models predicting different types of changes. You have the figures here. Now, when it comes to agriculture, again, this is from the IPCC report. It has already been in the past observed actually substantial reduction in agricultural productivity growth since 1961, but also the projections also show that a likely shortening of the growing season and increasing water stress. Yes, please. Okay, so it's also projected a possible yield reduction in most of Africa compared to 2005. So actually climate change then poses a significant threat to African marine and freshwater reservoirs as well. So this is not really hard. This is hardly surprising because we have several reports on this. Now the question, of course, is now how do we cope with this? With the population growth and economic growth, as the food demand really grows, and then as also like the consumption patterns also grow as we have more and more urbanization in the basin. Then what are the adaptation options we have? Among the adaptation options we have, I'm going to talk only about the tools for monitoring, or monitoring in general, and then use of analytic tools to support the adaptation practices. So talking about monitoring and adaptation, first of all, the question obviously is what to monitor and why to monitor. Examples of what to monitor are obviously in the agriculture sector, because water is going to be increasingly scarce as we have to grow more and more food from less water, then obviously we have to be very careful about how we manage agricultural water. Right now, in many sub-Saharan African countries, irrigation water management is one of the big problems. Low water efficiency, low water productivity. So that means we need to monitor this closely. Water productivity, which is simply like grains of like kilograms of grain per cubic meter of water, for example. We need to maximize productivity, but for that we need to understand, okay, where are the productivity hotspots, for example. Crop water stress, naturally, obviously. Irrigation water use efficiency. These are some of the examples we need to monitor continuously, for which we need some kind of tools. When I talk about analytic tools, probably it could be like a modeling tools, but not only modeling. So we need really to, especially without water security, there's no food security. That means we need to continuously, optimize water use. And then crop selection, crop being calendar selection. You have seen in the previous slide one of the likely impacts of climate change is shortening of growing season, but also like variability from year to year. This year, for example, we have El Nino. In Ethiopia, for example, the rains in the short season came early, and then the main rain season, the rain is stopping almost premature. That means with this variable, onset and cessation of rainfall, then the traditional cropping calendar will have a big challenge from time to time. So we need tools for predicting those, for advising farmers when to grow, what to grow, for example. So crop yield forecast important because as we are facing highly variable, unreliable rainfall again, it has huge humanitarian consequences. So crop yield forecast is another area of tools development. Quite many actually. I also added like strategic decisions on like medium to short term. Like for example, if agroecology is changing, how do I going to change the different types of crops and so on. So when it comes to monitoring and land use, scale is very important in my view. So we can talk about national scale or continental scale for policy decisions, for example. At river basin scale, I just picked one of the river basins in Ethiopia here. At river basin scale, then also application at catchment scale, which is very important, and also at landscape scale. I think one thing I would like to say from the onset really is, going forward, we need to have really a paradigm shift, especially in who develops and who uses and who applies these monitoring analytic tools. In my view, it's no more that we have centrally controlled or managed monitoring system or analytic systems. Rather, we need to have tools which really will be applicable and usable and used at multiple scales by different types of users. This is really absolutely important because we have to really empower the farmers to use information, to use technology. Otherwise, all these small-scale irrigation schemes which are proliferating right now will still have huge consequences on water. So, my general concept for this is I've talked about multiple scales, multiple uses. Then again, also multiple sources of data. It's no more only ground-based data. It's not only satellite-based data, but we also have all the other data sources like big data, for example, Internet of Things, or other surveys, etc. They need to be integrated. It's not like one is only a monitoring tool, because the monitoring tool, they have to be integrated or interoperable with decision support or analytic tools. This is really important. And then communicating this information at multiple scales to the various users, including at grassroots level, using various channels of communication is absolutely important. So this, like in a nutshell, summarizes my concept really going forward, how we integrate monitoring analytic tools. From this slide onwards, I will talk about a few examples where UMI is doing some work. One is, for example, monitoring agricultural water productivity using what we call the WAPOR data generated by FAO. NBI has some experience using the actual ET from the WAPOR. We have UMI has applied WAPOR in Ethiopia in the Blue Nile basin, especially to see hotspots where water is not evenly distributed among irrigation schemes, and also at the same time to determine really optimal allocation of water. So what was monitored here is agricultural water use, irrigation scheme performance assessment, which is very important, again, crop water productivity assessment. So this was combined in this work, which was done quite a few years back before I joined UMI. This combined the WAPOR satellite-based data with the ground observation, like giving farmers tools for soil moisture monitoring. And this combined together helps the farmers really to have a better irrigation scheduling, but also a better distribution of water within the irrigation scheme, because normally those who are upstream get more water than those who are downstream along the canal system. So this has helped, for example, in improving the performance of the irrigation scheme. This is actually the Koga scheme in the Blue Nile, which is actually a river to the tributary to the Blue Nile upstream of the Lake Tana. Now, another example, again, using WAPOR here now, right? This is now ongoing. UMI is supporting the Ministry of Agriculture to strengthen the irrigation management management information system. It's another example where, there's a huge emphasis on irrigation, so it means we need to really improve the water performance of irrigation schemes. Another area, I will not talk a lot about this one. Naga is going to talk about this one, water accounting. So as I've said earlier, going forward, we will be really faced with the challenge of producing more food with less water, proportionally less water. So for this reason, monitoring agricultural water use is absolutely important. One of the tools UMI currently is developing continental level for entire Africa is on water accounting, which is also includes agricultural water accounting. I'm just citing it as an example, but there'll be more on this from Naga later on. So let me just keep the animation. Another area of tool set or monitoring where UMI is currently directly involved about is monitoring of disaster risk, because climate change also means drought risk, also flood risk, or heat stress, etc. That means, again, taking the advantage of satellite remote sensing, UMI is generating information products or monitoring products and early warning products for monitoring drought and flood emergencies. Not going through the entire slide. You will have this slide at some point. But if you see resilience applications on the left-hand side, it will help in making policies, governance, and climate and sustainable financing. For example, think of, for example, crop insurance. These are all important inputs in that kind of thing. Land use planning or drought hotspots, drought proofing of agriculture, for example. river basin planning and disaster risk assessment, etc. So these are some of the examples of tools which leverage remote sensing, because remote sensing or Earth observation has the advantage it covers a large area, and most of the data needed is available free of cost, right? Publicly, essentially. What you really need actually is, you need to have the computational power and then all the capacity to do it. So IMI is working again on like generating flood and drought early warning and monitoring tools. So these are some of the examples I wanted to highlight. Of course, you can talk a lot about decision support tools and other analytic tools, but there's no time for that one. I'm just mentioning here a few of them. But however, one more point I want to address here is, now we have these innovations, we have these tools, pretty much at research level right now, but the question is now, how do we bring it to the grassroots level? How do you bring it to the practice? This is really important point. Otherwise, this effort can be assumed as wasted, because if it doesn't really inform development, if it doesn't help in the practice, then the task is not completed yet. So I have just one slide on to talk about scaling of this. When you talk about temporal scaling, of course, the question is now, is it about understanding past trends? Is it about like forecasting seasonally? Or is it about forecasting medium to like long term, for example? Because when we talk about the multiple scales, especially in the context of climate change, we are facing climate change impacts right now, but at the same time also, there are also actions we need to discuss right now, medium to long term, for example. So the temporal scale is absolutely important. Now, the other is the spatial scale. I talked earlier about the spatial scale. At the farm landscape level, the farmers or the irrigation user associations or the farmer cooperatives should really be using information or risk-based planning even in their agricultural practices. So yes, I mean, the theory, yes, that's good, but how do we do it? So we need to scale our tools and all the communication and the entire workflow from generating the tools all the way to use, they have to be like customized and aligned for use by those really at the farm and landscape level, which is absolutely important. A slightly higher spatial scale catchment level. I know in Ethiopia, for example, IMI has been working in the Awash Basin. This is one of the catchments you see, just the small catchment, the catchment diagram there. There's a lot of small scale irrigation happening, but there's no really catchment level, water balance computation, water allocation. And this is going to affect water availability at some point in the future because there will be more and more irrigation. So we need to, again, the tools and then the monitoring, the products need to inform decisions at that level. By the same token, at basin and national level. So when you talk about expanding and scaling the tools we have, the monitoring, systems we are generating, the scale is very important. So we need to really have all this into consideration. So before I conclude, just a few points now. So building capacity is absolutely important, especially moving from research to operational application. Again, embedding into workflows of relevant government agencies, that's very important because, when the tools are being used, then obviously, then they make a difference on the ground. So all these adaptation, measures will have impact when they are supported by information. Leveraging government land consolidation program, this is particularly in Ethiopia to address challenges of spatial resolution, awareness raising, expanding private sector role. There are private sector, small and medium enterprises coming up, providing agro-advisory services, for example, crop insurance and so on. And how can they use the monitoring or the data products we are generating, for example? This is very important. So, as an example, we can also think of learning landscapes or farms where all these technologies can be, piloted on the ground, and then scaled from there. This is just one approach for scaling, for example. So, in a nutshell, going forward, climate change means also uncertainty. It's not only outright shortage of water or excess water, but a lot of uncertainty. Then how do you deal with uncertainty? Then we need to have a risk-based planning, risk-based management, for which information becomes very important. So that means for this, the tools and the monitoring system we generate, they have to be integrated. and they have to be able to be used at the grassroots level, all the way up to the national level. For this, I just discussed about what kind of scaling strategy we may have to make sure this research or like a research level tools can also be applied and made available, in the practice. That is my last slide. Thank you for your attention. I hope I have the time. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Abdulkarim. That's really interesting presentation. You raised many points, very important points regarding monitoring, what to monitor, where to monitor, and when to monitor as well. The multiplicity of the scales of different intervention, and how to bring the practice, research into practice, and many more. So I think this is eye-opening for the next discussions that we are going to take. I hope the next few presentations also bring us something which can be incorporated into the panel discussion, which we'll have later on after the presentation, case studies. Now we'll move to the case studies, so to paper presentation. The first speaker presenter would be Dr. Naga. Dr. Naga is from UMI, and he is going to give his presentation titled Increasing Resilience in Agricultural Water Management using Continental Water Accounting Framework, a case study for the Nile River Basin countries. So Dr. Naga is a senior researcher and a water accounting team lead at the UMI, International Water Management. His research interests mainly focus on the overlapping areas of water resources, surface water hydrology, remote sensing, and climate change. He is specialized in using Earth observation for developing a wide variety of water indicators data using consistent methodological and digital innovation tools for integrated water resource management. Current research of Naga is broad and covers understanding of and developing sustainable water resource development plan and the climate change, understanding multi-sectoral water demand, supply and use, assessing the impact of agricultural investment, multi-scale water accounting and productivity analysis based on wide accounting studies. Dr. Naga is also leading the water accounting team at UMI, and I think Dr. Naga, the floor is yours, so you can have 10 minutes for the presentation, and over.
Yeah, thank you, Girma. I thought I was coming a bit late. Anyway, so can you see my screen?
Yes, yes.
Okay, perfect. Okay, thank you, Girma, for the introduction. And it was really nice to see Abdulkarim give a nice set up the tone for the entire session. So I am going to talk about the tool that we are using at IMI and how it can actually help increase resilience in agriculture water management systems within Africa, and also a bit focus on the Nile Basin region. Okay, a little bit of quick background here. So when we talk about climate change, water is primarily headlining in most of the places. And water is a critical background for meeting all the pressing, challenges, climate challenges. And we've seen that, millions of people are affected due to changes in the climate and the weather patterns, and then droughts and floods as well. So, and then the graphic on your right side on the slide actually indicates that Africa is in the front line of the climate change, mainly because if you look into the index scores of the climate resilience for the entire globe, Africa ranks least. That means we are less prepared to face the consequences of the climate change within Africa. And what we are trying to do here is to develop some digital innovation tools that can actually provide data, not only just analysis ready data, but decision ready data, so that we can quickly come up with some right decisions and increase our resilience to climate change. So within IMI, we have a project called Digital Innovations for Water Secure Africa. And we believe that DIVASA, Digital Innovation for Water Secure Africa, is critical towards achieving climate resilience in food and water systems. Mainly because on the slide, you have major challenges that we're facing these days in terms of managing water. broadly categorized into scarcity, variability of water availability, productivity issues, and then also transboundary issues such as the Nile Basin. And data is central to these kind of problems. So we need hydroclimatic or hydrometeorological data sets to understand the current situations, not only the baseline information, but also projection data into the future, so that we can plan accordingly for the changes that we are going to see over the next few years to several decades. So this is what we are trying to do. We are trying to use within this DIVASA project, we are trying to bring in some digital innovation tools and technologies so that we can produce all the required data for African continent. When we talk about using data sets, so the DIVASA project is mainly focusing on two different aspects, flood and drought resilience aspect, and also building continental water accounting data sets. So my presentation will be mostly focusing on the continental water accounting data sets. So when we talk about these data sets, we use Earth observation data, satellite data, to avoid data scarcity in most of the African countries. So, and then we try to produce analysis study data and also develop a lot of applications, use cases, and then also build models that will lead to decision-ready support system or DSS tools, and ultimately lead to decisions and actions. So initially, we started at a continental scale. Our data sets are global, and then they have high technology scaling potential, as you see on the bottom. So there's a lot of technical and skill requirement when we start, but then that reduces as we move from global to local, where we build on the stakeholder engagement and stakeholder deliberation to build the tools and the DSS systems catered for individual river basins that will lead to integrated water resources management and then increasing the resilience through appropriate decisions and actions. So talking about water accounting approach or water accounting framework, within IMI, we use a framework called Water Accounting Plus model. And it is an open source model that provides you a basic understanding of water accounts within the basin. Basically, how much of water is coming into the basin, how much of water is going out of the basin. And we do this analysis at multiple scales, not only just at the river basin scale, but we also do it at the catchment scale, we do it at the country scale, we do it at the administrative scale. And to avoid the problem of the limited data or data scarcity, we use mostly Earth observation data. All the codes in the model are open source. That means anybody can download the codes from the GitHub, and then they can also run the model for their choice of their study area. And the innovative approach within the Water Accounting Plus is it is unlike other hydrological models. It also produces, apart from the data and raster data and tabular data that any hydrological model produces, this Water Accounting Plus approach produces a lot of organized results in terms of resource-based sheets, in terms of different variables, diving deep into variables and deriving a lot of indicators that are really useful for decision making. And the idea is that we want to ignite well-informed and transparent discussion on water resources using these data sets. So within the DIVASA project, we are actually doing multi-scale water accounting assessments. So we do it sub-basin scale, we do basin scales, and also we are doing it continental scale. So in the graphic on the left side, will actually tell you what kind of remote sensing data sets we are using. We are combining remote sensing outputs with global hydrological model outputs, and then also ground observations to calibrate and validate some of our remote sensing data sets. And then run this water accounting approach, Water Accounting Plus model, to produce a lot of information on sheets, and that can be summarized as sheets, tables, and maps. And we are coming up with a lot of tools as well, which I will touch upon towards in few minutes. So on the right side, what you see is that, okay, we have transitioned from a river basin, conventional river basin approach to a continental approach. The way we do it, we gather all the data at the continental scale, and then we run the model at the continental scale to produce all the data sets and the inputs and then the base layers. And once we have that, then we can derive the water accounting information for any river basin scale or at a national scale. So this is a framework. I'm not going to dive into it because in the interest of time, I'll just touch on it. It's a full continent water accounting plus framework. It takes, on the left side, you see a lot of data sets that it requires to run the model, and it is being accessed through APIs. The entire framework is built on Amazon Cloud Services, AWS Cloud. So the model downloads data from multiple sources, and then it runs the model. On the right side, you see that all the data sets and outputs are actually available, will be available soon on the open data cubes. And we are focusing on the Digital Earth Africa data cube and also Africa Geoportal data cube. So the data cubes will be directly linked with our AWS cloud buckets or storage servers, where the data will be seamlessly updated and then integrated with the data cubes. So the modification that we're doing as part of the DVASA project to enable faster assessment of water accounts is that once we derive all the data for Africa, we have additional modules that will actually clip and extract data that is necessary for any hydrological basin or an administrative boundary of your interest and produce water accounts. And that we call it as an expedited water accounting assessments, where you don't have to run the full length model, but just take the input files from the continental water accounting run and then run the model to get the results. So here in this step, we are trying to avoid the pre-processing and downloading of the data set. And there is another model called a rapid optimized sheet one extractor. We call it as a ROSE. Using this module, we can actually avoid even running the model. And we can only the last step of the model is required to be run, but then this module builds on the continental water accounting inputs and outputs. So first we run the continental water accounting and produce all the inputs and outputs available for the Africa, and then depending on the requirement of the user, we can actually speed up the process and then do water accounts in a very short span of time. As part of this project, we are also generating a lot of data products. The list of data products is given here. Probably you can go through the list, but I will touch on some of them, which are really important and exciting for us as well. One is the continental discharge product. So this discharge, we are producing a continental routed discharge at a monthly time scale from 2000 to 2021. What you see on the slide is the long-term mean discharge, but the discharge is available on a monthly time scale for around 64,000 stream segments in Africa. So it's a very high level of information. We have calibrated and validated it using the GRDC and other global hydrological models. So the discharge data will be available soon. This is a project, it's an ongoing project, and then we're planning to finalize all the products by December. So if anybody, any of you are interested in this product, in getting your hands dirty on this data set, please reach out to me. We should have this data finalized by December and should be available online through NME platform. We also have a desalination database for Africa product generated to understand, the importance of desalination. And then for Nile Basin, especially for Egyptian part of the Nile Basin, it is very critical and important that we understand the inputs coming out of the desalination plants, because they bring in additional water into the basin. So we are computing this desalination database, so we can also give you estimates of desalination happening within any given river basin. And you will see that there are a lot of desalination plants inland as well, which actually not only take the seawater, but they are primarily driven by the saline water from the lakes or shallow groundwater that is not of good quality, or salty shallow groundwater in the coastal regions. So, and we also generated a cropland, irrigated and rain-fed maps of Africa. What you see from the global database is that most of the global database provides you information on croplands only. They do not provide information on rain-fed and irrigated crops. There are few data sets which provide irrigated and rain-fed crops, but then they do not provide us the estimates of how much of irrigation water use is happening within this basin. So we developed an approach where we not only take the cropland class from global land cover maps, and we split that into irrigated and rain-fed, and irrigated class is further split into the formal irrigation and informal irrigation or supplemental irrigation. So the purple pixels that you see are more formal irrigation, which are fed by constant stream of water supplied through infrastructure in terms of canals and reservoirs that are set and managed by the government agencies. But the supplemental irrigation or the blue pixels are the mostly informal irrigation or farmer-led irrigation that is mostly increasing in Africa nowadays, which are mostly led by the farmers. And they bring in the irrigation just to supplement the deficit of water from the rainfall. And we on the table below, we have an estimates of how much irrigation is happening. The irrigated area within the Nile Basin is around 25%.
Dr. Naga, sorry for the interest of time. Can you wrap up with a minute?
Yes,
also?
please.
Thanks.
Yes. So we have these estimates available as well. So we are creating a lot of maps and data sets for Nile Basin that actually are interest to the users within the basin. This slide shows the green water and blue water. Green water is basically the rainfall-based DT, and then the blue water is irrigation-based DT. We have quantified that for the not only Nile Basin, for any basin within Africa. And we're also looking at the seasonal data analysis. So a lot of hydrological parameters are becoming available through this project. So here you see ET, soil moisture, and runoff. And this is a sample continental water accounting sheet. This is the first time we have produced the continental water accounting sheet, which actually summarizes how much of water comes in Africa and then goes out of Africa, and then what happens between this. And then we are producing a lot of indicators. So all of these indicators will be available individually as well as summarized in form of the sheets. And we are disseminating this data through multiple platforms here. So by December, I think we should have all those platforms for dissemination of data should be up and running. So please reach out to us if you have any requests for data or if you want to find out more about our projects. So I will leave the conclusion slide for you to read, but that's all I have. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Naga, for the nice presentation, and that's really interesting. Sorry, the time is not with our side, so we have to cut you short at the last, but it's really interesting. Participant can just put their question in the Q&A so that Dr. Naga or others can respond directly, or we can also take them during the Q&A session. Okay, thanks. Now our second speaker is Mr. Asadiq Muhammad Ibrahim. Are you there? And he'll give a presentation on the development suitability map for rainwater harvesting in Eastern Nile Basin, I hope. Mr. Asadiq Al-Mahal holds PhD degree in 2008 in water resource and environmental engineering from Sudan University, and MS in water resource from Sudan University again. He has over 14 years of experience in different national projects related to water engineering, including quantitative and qualitative, such as lecture in water resource and environmental engineering college, Sudan University, and also worked as hydrology and water resources as a design engineer. Currently, he is working in Al-Amir Group company for engineering consultancy as hydrology engineer to provide technical support, prepare hydrological studies, and technical design. Mr. Asadiq, are you there?
Yeah, hi there.
Yes. Sorry if I pronounce your name wrong, so I apologize for that. You can share your screen and start your presentation. You have 10 minutes for the presentation. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Yes, thank you. It's good.
Yes.
Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. I hope you are all doing well. My name is Salih Al-Maleh. I'm going to talking about development suitability maps for rainwater harvesting in Eastern Nile Basin. Let's start from background. In arid and semi-arid regions, rainwater harvesting has been used for many years to enhance water productivity for agricultural irrigation and domestic use. The Eastern Nile Basin have a good experience in rainwater harvesting, the techniques that are used in countries are somehow more or less the same. Ethiopia use household ponds, community ponds, and small dams for irrigation and livestock. In Sudan and South Sudan, the purpose of rainwater harvesting to provide water for domestic use and livestock by using improved hafir and small dams. Okay, so this study aimed to develop suitability maps for potential rainwater harvesting in Eastern Nile Basin by applying GIS and multi-criteria analysis approach. Okay, so this study aims to prepare an integrated rainwater harvesting for selected techniques that are of high value for water decision maker to properly identify suitable techniques that can be implemented in the areas. In this study, also, I selected 5 criteria: rainfall and runoff, land use, soil map, to use this criteria to make stability, development stability rainwater harvesting. Okay, I'm talking about study area. The Eastern Nile Basin contains 4 basins: Blue Nile, Tekesi Adbara, Barakoba, Sobat, and Main Nile Basin. Okay, based on previous criteria and available for Eastern Nile Basin, the stability model framework, we use okay, in this methodology, I use GIS technique and analytic hierarchy process analysis to make stability model, stability maps. Then the rainwater harvesting availability was generated. This map will help decision makers and water resource planners in Eastern Nile Basin countries to plan rainwater harvesting structure, such as the construction or the build of ponds, dams, small dams, hafir, in high suitable and suitable areas to reduce the urban flooding in heavy area rainfall areas. Okay, in this study, 5 criteria: slope, land cover, soil map, rainfall, runoff depths were used to determine the most suitable areas for example, like dams or hafir, or to pond or ponds. Okay, here is a flow chart shows the steps for model to make to obtain potential rainwater harvesting map. Okay, so you can see here there is 5 criteria: slope, runoff, depth, rainfall, soil map, land use. To obtain slope obtained from DEAM data, and also we used DEAM for watershed delineation, and the rainfall using HEC-UHMS tool to calculate the runoff depths, and also the soil and land use. After preparing land use soil map, we can obtain CN map, grid map, also we can use to calculate the runoff modeling using UHMS. Okay. After calculating runoff depths, go to direct to reclassify the 5 criteria: the slope and runoff and rainfall and soil and land use, and then we use analytic hierarchy process. This method can be used to calculate weights for criteria. This simple decision matrix with 4 criteria. Okay, here okay, here there is matrix, simple matrix. I have 5 criteria, and in step 1, you see this value. This pairwise compression matrix is created with the help of scale. That scale you can see here. This scale for pairwise compression start from 1 to 9 scale. 1 equal importance and 2 equal and moderate importance. Okay. Also, you can see the matrix. The matrix length is 5 cross 5 criteria used to decision maker process. We have a 5 cross 5 matrix, as we have 5 criteria. That is rainfall, slope, soil, land use, runoff. Okay, this value this value depends on decision maker or the person who want to select the suitable or the suitability map. What will be have a value 2 or 3 or 5 or 2 or 2, 3. These values of the cell, for that some question should be asked to person. How is important?
Sorry, Mr. Asad, can you just go to the result sections and we can just leave the methodology part, because we are short of time, so you have to conclude in 2 minutes.
Okay. Okay. I go to quickly. Okay. The second step, we calculate the average, and the third is we calculate the weights, and then we calculate consistency measure. Finally, we need to calculate the criteria consistency ratio. Consistency ratio depend on criteria index and randomly index. Randomly index, you can see here, this is randomly index. Depend on the matrix. I have 5 matrix, 5 cross 5 matrix, 5. Then the randomly index is equal 1.1. Okay. So after calculating the matrix, if consistency ratio less than 0.1, we can assume that the matrix is reasonable consistent. So we can continue with process to complete process. If consistency ratio greater than 0.1, we need to make it repeat analysis in matrix, in symbol matrix. After complete HAB, then go to there to get these weights and complete the potential rainwater harvesting. Here's this data source and processing, type of data and characteristics, and source and use data like DIM to delineate to denilation catchment slope.
Can you just wrap up within the
Okay. This slide you show DIM data obtained from USGS S6 plural. This map shows the slope map obtained from the previous DIM for basins, and this also the land use and soil type. We can see the Eastern Nile Basin have 6 classes: agricultural and bare land and forest and residential vegetation and water. And this also the map showing the hydrological soil group A, group B, and group C. The Eastern Nile Basin just has 3 groups: group B, group C, group D. And then we generate the curve number. Sorry, I can't. Here, this curve number grid maps generated with land use and soil data by using HMS tools in ArcGIS. The results show that the Eastern Nile Basin value range from 58 and 100 curve number. Okay, and also this rainfall. This rainfall in Eastern Nile Basin, you can see this range from 0 to 2076, obtained from intro office data. And then we go to there to estimate.
Can you just go to the overall overlay map and then just conclude, please?
Well, okay. This is runoff depth estimation, and this is runoff depth map. And here there is weight analysis. This builder model for reclassify for 5 criteria, and also this shows the run of weighted overlay. Okay, the results show that the Eastern Nile Basin had was very high suitable 41% and high suitable for 37 in Blue Nile sub basin, and also indicates that the land was moderate suitable about 42% and high suitable about 15% in Barakoba. But this results show I go. Okay.
Thank you for presentation.
Just to show this stability map in Blue Nile and this stability map in Barakoba, Sobat, and this in the main graph and main Nile.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Okay, and this size suitable map for selected Hafir and dams in Sudan. We show that the Hafir in streams. Okay, thank you. This
thank you. It's enough. Just the presentation will be shared with the participants, so the participant can look at the presentation. Thank you for your presentation. Because the sake of time, we need to just stop here. We are using 5 minutes from now, 15 minutes. So thank you. So we'll invite the next speaker. The next speaker is Attendo Zinda Zika from University of Cape Town, South Africa. She will be presenting on the toward sustainable and resilient water resource management development of an innovative grey water reuse assessment tool. So Sikan Zindizi Tendo is an Ugandan MSc civil engineer student working with the Future Water Institute at the University of Cape Town. Her focus is on urban water research, and her research interests includes grey water, rainwater, and stormwater harvesting in urban areas. I'm sorry if I pronounce your name wrongly, but you'll have 10 minutes. Please be respectful to time. Now we are almost spending 15 minutes for 10 minutes presentation. Just go to, don't spend more time on the methodology, go to result and the conclusion. So participants can look at the presentation later on. Over to you. Cindy.
Okay, thank you. Can you see my screen?
Yes, we can see your screen.
Okay, great. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Zinzi, and I'll be presenting on an innovative grey water reuse assessment tool on behalf of Dr. John Okedi and I from the University of Cape Town. The background to this case study. 1 in 3 people in Africa are faced with the challenge of water scarcity daily. We know that agriculture is one of our largest sectors, and yet 95% of Africa's farming relies on rainfall. This situation is worsened in the urban arid regions of Africa, such as Cape Town, and that is why we chose that as the city for our case study. Cape Town experienced a drought in between 2015 to 2018 that almost led to what is known as Day Zero. For those who may not know Day Zero, that is when the city of Cape Town was going to cut off municipal supply to all its residents. This is the methodology that was used to build the tool. The actual building that was used, institute that was used as a case study, was the University of Cape Town. The main literature that the tool relied on were the guidelines for grey water use in South Africa by Cadden and Roda et al. Why did we choose this literature? These guidelines combined examples of different areas from different areas that have used grey water and suited them to local conditions, local being Cape Town, South Africa. Examples of countries that have implemented grey water use in agriculture are Australia and Namibia. Using those guidelines and other literature, we obtained different buildings, got different buildings and separated them into residential and non-residential categories. These are buildings on the campus of the University of Cape Town. And from the buildings that we got, we obtained water demand, and we used the water demand data to select and narrow down which buildings would be used as a foundation for our tool. Based off this, we designed the tool. The tool is Excel-based and based off the main literature and data available. I would like to say there were no grey water samples collected for this tool. All of it was using literature that was available. Over to the results, which is the tool at this stage. On my left-hand side, I hope you can see my mouse, but there's a screenshot right here that shows disclaimer. At the bottom, you can see tabs labeled introduction, home, residences, non-residences, and the feedback page. When the user opens this tool, it lands on the home tab. Prior to the home tab, there's an introduction tab. This simply has the context concerning the tool, the background to the tool. On the home tab, we thought it useful to put a range of disclaimers that the user would need to know. Examples that I'll just give a few examples and you can go back and look at the presentation. One being all grey water users in this tool are non-portable, such that a user does not go ahead and use it for portable purposes. The second one being the tool follows the City of Cape Town municipal water supply laws. Still on the home page, on my right-hand side, where my mouse is at the moment, my cursor, there were 3 preliminary questions. The moment a user's answer is affirmative to any of the questions, the user is asked to exit the tool. These questions are a summary of the most crucial situations where a user cannot use grey water on their property. An example would be in question 1, where they asked, are there any of the following on the property where you intend to use grey water? That's babies below the age of 3 years, or a pregnant woman, elderly people above the age of 70 years, and anyone infected with an ear infection, skin infection, etc. Because of ethical considerations, we decided against asking users if they have an HIV/AIDS positive person on the property. However, we stated it as a disclaimer. In the event that a user is able to use grey water on their property, they will then proceed to either a residences tab or a non-residences tab, or even both, depending on how they intend to use their grey water. So the slide you're seeing now is replicated on both the residential tab and the non-residential tab. But given that we are focusing on irrigation, that is what I'm going to take you through today under the tool. So this tool separates the users into 2 categories. Part A is assumed demand, which is where most of our average users lie. Most people do not know the flow rates of water fixtures in their house or on their property, or even how much water they use. And this is why we had to create this section to cater for the average user. Part B would be calculated demand, where if a user knows their flow rates of water fixtures and water demand, they'll input them and get a more accurate answer. But today I'll take you through the assumed demand, specifically irrigation. So the first column is water demand element. It's ideally what they'll use their grey water for. Then there's flow rates of water fixtures, and those are based off the buildings at the University of Cape Town. Then there's estimated water demand in liters, estimated water demand per person per day. There's a volume of grey water produced per person per day in liters. These 3 columns in the middle, from estimated water demand to volume of grey water produced, are simply for the user to backtrack in the event that they're not happy with the final output. The next columns are recommended analysis level for grey water reuse. What do I mean by analysis? That simply means, as a user, in the event that you get full analysis as an answer, your water has to be analyzed for different constituents, such as boron and pH, and then treated. The next column is recommended category. Categories are synonymous with the recommended analysis level. This was based off the RODA framework. Those are the guidelines for grey water use in South Africa. The categories of a user are from category 1 to category 3. The higher the category, the more stringent the restrictions and treatment required. Lastly, the last 2 columns. In the event that the user types yes to a particular water demand element, which in this case will be irrigation, yes, there'll be a prompt to print. Now, when the user clicks print, I will show you what comes up. They get a PDF customized for them based on their category. This PDF has a list of things, as you can see in the table of contents screenshot here. It has the equipment that they'll need to use. A screenshot is on my right-hand side, showing that grey water needs to have purple pipes because that stands out to the eye to tell people do not use the water from this pipe, and different visuals for their guidance. The PDF also has restrictions based on category. It has grey water analysis, what I'd referred to, grey water quality guidelines, the risks, and a grey water use checklist. This slide has a sample of the different restrictions for the different categories. On my left-hand side, you can see restrictions for category 1. There's restrictions relating to health impact. There's do, for example, use bath water and laundry rinse water only. Do not use grey water, falling in this category for different users. There's also restrictions relating to impacts on plant growth and plant yield, because grey water does impact plants and the soil to a particular extent. The same applies to category 3. Still with the PDF, previously I talked about analysis. The main challenge that we'd realize is that the reason why grey water is not implemented is because the knowledge is present, but it's not easily understood by the average user. So the whole point of this tool is to create a very simplified platform for the average day user to implement grey water. So that is what you're seeing on this slide. On my left-hand side, under analysis, As a user, we'll let you know what constituents you need to give the people analyzing your greywater to check for. And as an extra benefit, on the right-hand side, once your water is treated and the results are given back to you, we have created a list of greywater quality guidelines based on South African water quality for you to check. So you do not have to go and look at a plethora of guidelines of 300 pages plus, because it's all summarized for you. Lastly, the risks associated with greywater reuse are also in the PDF. We give the examples of pathogens and examples of disease cause, and we let you know that your chances of risk are less if you treat your water. And lastly, in the PDF is a greywater reuse checklist for a user, where they can print it out and tick off as they use greywater. And this PDF is less than 30 pages long. In conclusion, the presentation applicability to the Nile Basin. First, the implementation of greywater use at a large scale helps in potable water savings. Research has shown that greywater in tandem with rainwater harvesting and stormwater harvesting can lead to up to 69% in potable water savings. And lastly, this paper recommends a study of this project recommends a study of other water reuse alternatives such as rainwater and stormwater harvesting for large-scale implementation. Thank you.
Thank you, Ntando. That's really on time. Thank you very much for the nice presentation and also keeping on time. So I think please be mindful for the time, and also in the chats, it was mentioned the previous presenter didn't conclude his presentation. It's unfortunate we gave him warning many times, but we need to just more focus on key results rather than more of the methods. Of course, the methods is very important, but the view, I think we can have time just to look at in their time. So now we'll move to the fourth speaker. The fourth speaker is Diana Ibn Muhammad from. So she will be presenting about using Sentinel-2 on Google Earth Engine in crop type identification for irrigation management in Eastern Nile. Diana is a geologist specialized in GIS with 10 years of experience. She also worked as part-time teaching assistant in the GIS and cartography department, and she used GIS to solve many problems of different fields such as mining and water resource, health, agriculture, tourism, and humanitarian studies. She has published 2 papers on GIS remote sensing usage in mining. Dania, you have 10 minutes for your presentation. It's over to you.
Hello. Hello. Can you see the slides?
Yes, we can see it.
Okay. Hi, everyone. I'm Dani Ibn Omar, GIS and remote sensing geologist. My presentation on using Sentinel-2 on Google Earth Engine in crop type identification.
We lost you, Dania.
Yeah. Sorry. The background of this presentation, of this research, that irrigation operation manager in Jazeera scheme, one of the famous schemes in Sudan, is responsible for the amount of water that farmers need to water their farms. But unfortunately, farmers give fake numbers of their cultivated areas and crop types. So a research in Intro, Nile Basin, it's a technical center to support the equitable and adequate use of Nile water. It became a concern to find a tool, a simple tool, to access the use of water in irrigated schemes to replace traditional field visits. So as a team from Ethiopia, South Sudan, Sudan, we provided research. In my part of this research, I suggested building crop signature library for Eastern Nile region using API, JavaScript API in Google Earth Engine, and to identify phenology parameters and signature. And also to identify crop types and to reduce amount of water used in irrigation. So my study area was in Kinana scheme. It's sugarcane scheme in Eastern Bank of White Nile. and it uses pumping irrigated by pumping water from White Nile. And this is the Kinana scheme, and this is the study area, part of the scheme. The other scheme is Jazeera scheme. It's a western bank of Blue Nile. It also uses supplementary irrigation from the Blue Nile, or furrow irrigation is a main irrigation scheme. So this is a Jazeera scheme between Blue Nile and White Nile. The main objective is crop type identification via building or establishment of crop library. So this is the model or methodology. We used Sentinel-2 images from the planting date to the harvest date. You also calculating the NDVI for each image, and then we get the phenology parameters, and then we build the NDVI time series for sugarcane and other crops, and then building the crop signature library. So we filter Sentinel-2 images from the planting date to the harvest date, and then we use NDVI for each image, or we calculate it. We use the correction for the clouds effect, as you see the first one, cloudy one, and then using the area in Kinana scheme. Here is the phenology parameter for NDVI time series for a crop that will discriminate each crop from the other, from the growing to harvest, planting to harvest. So we calculate NDVI time series for the area by defining the month start season and the end of the season. We use also the crops from Jazeera already made map from Jazeera scheme. Then we use also indices like LAI and EVI to identify subtle differences between crops. We use this crop calendar to know each crop dates, and then the time series, which NDVI time series, which is different from a crop to another. So as you see here, we use the band combination to highlight the vegetated areas. Then the NDVI equation have been applied to identify the health of and planting, the health of the plants and the planting stage. Then NDVI time series will define for the predefined points of cotton, wheat, apples, serene, sugarcane, fallow areas. So as you see here, all crops that have NDVI signatures, so they are overlapping all over. They are all overlapping because of the differences. So we create a separate NDVI signature for each crop. As you see here, this one is for the sugarcane and cotton, here for the wheat, and here for apple 70. Here is a fallow area. The highest NDVI values of 0.7 have been obtained in wheat and sugarcane areas near to harvest stage. And the lowest values were obtained in fallow areas, which is a good indicator of crop stage and calendar. The fluctuation in NDVI time series is due to soil, cloud, and other atmospheric effects. So we have been calibrated using different indices like LAI and EVI. So NDVI time series have shown high correlation with plant calendar growth, stage, and health. So crop NDVI signature library have been established for Eastern Nile area. So a recommendation that advanced studies must be made, especially in using different vegetation indices to eliminate soil temperature, cloud, and other atmospheric effects to make it more accurate to identify crop type and also after that for area calculation. Continue building crop library, which have been established to make crop monitoring in Eastern Nile Basin, Eastern Nile area easier and more precise. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Diana. You did it with short time, so you don't need to rush. You have still time, but it's fine, and you did it very well. Thank you for your nice presentation. So the next presenter, I think, I've heard that Iyasu is not around. So now I'll invite Dr. Harb Ahmed El Said.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, okay, thanks. Dr. Harb will be presenting about development, the optimization reservoir operation in light agriculture water management of Eastern Nile Basin countries. Dr. Harb Ahmed is a professor and department head of agricultural economics, Faculty of Agriculture, Al-Azhar University in Egypt. And he was also an alumnus of Fortis internship batch 2020. So is over to Dr. Harb Ahmed to give your presentation. You have 10 minutes for the presentation. Over to you.
Okay, thank you. Good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon. Make your presentation full screen, please.
Yeah, I'm going to start my presentation. It's about development of optimization reservoirs operation, light agriculture total management for Eastern Nile Basin countries.
Sorry, Dr. Harb, you make
Yes.
it full screen. Your presentation is in the presentation mode yet. Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, thank you.
It's good?
It's good now, yeah.
Yeah, thank you. My presentation title is Development of Optimization Reservoirs Operation, Light Agriculture Total Management of Eastern Nile Basin countries. This presentation will be covering two topics, are agriculture total management and reservoir operation optimization by GAMS model, general algebraic model ring system. This affiliation. My background is for this research. Most of people of Eastern Nile Basin countries, farmers, live below the poverty line and they depend on the Nile for their livelihood, food, and nutrition security. The Eastern Nile countries of Egypt, Sudan, South Sudan, and Ethiopia share similar factors to many water conflicts. The growing population will affect food and nutrition security level in the Eastern Nile by increasing the demand for water resource. The contribution will be check out the optimization reserves operation in light agriculture total management of Eastern Nile Basin countries from the 4 countries, from the development and the operation of the Grand Ethiopian Sans Dam, will protecting baseline flows to the downstream countries, including flow into the Egyptian High Dam, Aswan Dam. The objective, this article will check the out of optimization operation in light agriculture, as I said before. Also, analysis has studied the potential for parity of agent benefit sharing in Nile Basin. New evidence methodology. Its integrated approach is formulating to bring the economic, hydrological, and the institution of region into a unified framework for policy analysis. Optimization model is dynamic, developed, and applied to measurement the efficient for operation light agricultural route management in 4 countries, improving measures to operate the reservoir for the 4 Eastern Nile countries, Ethiopia, Sudan, South Sudan, and Egypt, by GAMS program module. The results, it's a possibility for all countries to be well off and no country to be worse off from a managed operation of these two storage facilities. Still debates the optimize of our results, considerable water diplomacy negotiation among the Eastern Nile Basin countries will be required to improve the agricultural management water. Also, the optimization model will develop to identify the potential of Pareto improving operations that GERD agent negative impact associated with the development of GERD for the four Eastern Nile. The associated economic value were among the variables optimized to identify the potential impact and the benefit of the GERD. Discounted total economic benefit over 20-year period for each country can be at least as large with both dams in place as with only the existing High Aswan Dam. This table shows that the table benefit, the economic benefit, and the water supply policy scenarios for 4 countries like that. The recommendation to deepening Nile cooperation and advancing the theme of SIMS NBDF. This opportunity for an improvement and efficient benefit sharing result could provide a real motivation for dialogue and cooperation among these countries, have a potential to inform multilateral negotiations through information provided by result of our optimized water sharing, constrained by the requirement of politically acceptable benefit sharing arrangement. Also could guide unilateral decision making for each repaying country, as our result also show economically optimized grouping and hydropower production patterns like that. This article or research could serve as guidance for win-win-win negotiation between Ethiopia and Egypt, from which the farmer could be relieved from its age-old burden of poverty and hunger, and the latter seeing protection of its water supply. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Doctor. So now we already finished all the case study presentations, and thank you for the nice presentation.
Thank you.
Covering all different case studies, all different interesting case studies.
Yes.
Now we will move to a Q&A. If participants have questions to ask, they can maybe raise their hand, or they can just type their question on the chat. So I'll go through Q&A in the chat, and there are a few questions which is posed. The first question is by Dessa. He says, with the Nile being a shared water sources, how does each country in the basin account and monitor the uncertain water usage using the tools that have been mentioned? I believe this may be directed to Dr. Naga, or Dr. Naga, do you have answer to this question?
Can you hear me?
Yes, now.
Dr. Girma?
Yes, we can hear you now.
Okay, so how does each country in the basin account and monitor uncertain water usage using the tools that have been mentioned? So yes, so the Water Accounting Plus tool provides data on crop water usage or agriculture water usage. In fact, multi-sectoral water usage in domestic as well as agriculture, as well as environmental water requirement and use. So it provides this data for the entire continent. So it is possible to extract data for any country or any river basin. So the data it will be available online, so the users can actually access the data. It is possible. And then we are trying to build some tools on top of this so that the end users don't have to do some technical analysis in order to access the data. So we're trying to provide this data for different countries, already computed data extraction, and then this data will be available via dashboards that IWMI is planning to build. So those tools are coming, and then they should be providing all the data as requested.
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Naga.
Thank you.
Yes, then the next question is on, I think that is something related to data for current number for Sadiq Mohammed. So I think he also replied that the data is available for current number, which is used for his multi-criteria decision analysis using HP method. So the next one will be again from Desa. This is directed to Tendo. With your case studies based around Cape Town University, how effective is it on the general global scale for grey water analysis and management to be employed? Tendo, do you have answer for this?
Yes, I do.
Sure.
And perhaps my colleague, Dr. Kedi, can pitch in after.
Okay.
But first, the reason why we chose Cape Town is because it's known as the worst case scenario of a drought in our African context. And this methodology of implementation from one case and adapting it to the particular local conditions that you have now was copied from the guidelines for grey water use in South Africa, where they looked at places like Australia, which would have been thought to be very different from Africa, and adjusted to local conditions. So to say it is effective because it just provides a basic foundation, a starting line, which can then be adapted to local conditions, be it in Uganda, Nigeria, Egypt, different places, but the foundation is the same with grey water. Then secondly, grey water is highly variable in its constituents. Even if it was just looking at the University of Cape Town, you'd find different constituent levels and different recommendations of risk related to grey water. And that in itself shows that however much, yes, it's based on the University of Cape Town, even then it can still be adapted around Cape Town. I don't know if that's clear enough. Would you like me to expound more? Or if Dr. Kedi would like to add anything? Thank you.
Yes, I can add something. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Yes. So this particular project is linked to, there's a drive here in Cape Town and many places in the world to create what they call water sensitive precincts, where we sustainably use water. So although we're using Cape Town because there's a drive there towards the water sensitive campus or water sensitive cities, it's quite similar everywhere. And the tool that Zinzi generated there is quite replicable. But it's more applicable in places where this water is scarce. And so it's essentially providing an option, looking at water. In fact, what we're trying to do here is to remove the word poor quality or hazardous water from our vocabulary. It's just a different version of water quality. And there's an opportunity here to try and improve it and reuse it in our system. While creating water-sensitive communities and water-sensitive precincts where we value water and basically to benefit the communities where we live. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Kedi. So that's really helpful. And now we have another question from Jackie. I said, what is DST? More explanation about it, please. I don't know which presentation she refers to, maybe presentation with Naga or Dr. Karim. I'm not sure. Jackie, could you explain where this abbreviation was used? DST.
Probably I already replied in the chat.
Oh,
It
you
is a-
replied. Okay, okay.
the
Okay, thanks.
CS tools, it's an abbreviation.
Yeah. Okay, this support tools. Okay, sorry, I didn't see the chat. You already replied. So thanks. So there is also a question from Shatu Ararso for Dr. Naga. It was it's responded there. Participant can look at it if you want to. So there is a response directly to the question. Any other question from the participants? We still have time. We are located in 10 minutes. Now we are almost 6 minutes. We have still 4 minutes. If not, I have one question for Asadiq. Mohammed, we used a multi-criteria decision analysis for analyzing, for multi-criteria for mapping of rainwater harvesting ponds. So I saw, I think around 5 criteria were used, but I was wondering if the 5 criteria was selected were not redundant. My fear is like you have rainfall and surface runoff. So I feel like there's some kind of, even if you calculate the consistency ratio for the HP method, whatever, but the criteria selected should not be redundant in this multi-criteria decision analysis. So the curve number, all these kind of things is, I think there is some kind of redundancy, I feel. So could you comment on that, please? Mr. Asadi, are you there?
Yeah. Okay, sorry again. Yeah. Okay, what's the question?
The question was, in the multi-criteria decision analysis, the criteria that he used, I feel like there may be some kind of redundancy because
Yes.
when you choose criteria for multi-criteria decision analysis, the one of the criteria when you choose these indicators or criteria, we can say there should not be any kind of redundancy. But when I see surface runoff, you want to map potential areas for water harvesting. So you have rainfall in your criteria, you have surface runoff in your criteria. As long as you have surface runoff, why you need rainfall? That's my question. So, and all others, because I feel like slope, land use, soil, all this kind of thing, you want potential areas where you have high surface runoff. But if you are already having surface runoff magnitude, why you need other criteria?
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Okay. We need to because the runoff is not one criteria to select side section for side selection for dams or hafir. We need to also to know what about slope and soil and land use because the runoff here in this criteria I use runoff depths. Okay, not the discharge meter cubic per second. I use only runoff depths in millimeter.
So
yeah, is we need to choose 3 or 5 criteria because the runoff is not only to use rainwater harvesting or to select the rainwater harvesting site. We need to investigation about other criteria.
Yeah, I feel like, okay, you want to have a rainwater harvesting pond somewhere else. Okay.
Yes.
Then you have like, if you know your potential runoff areas, then you can choose that runoff area as a potential. But you can include the slope and others. Maybe when you just to locate this rainwater harvesting pond, so we need to have like, we can't do rainwater harvesting pond in a very steep slope where you can't have construction of ponds. So that may be something which is okay for me. But The redundancy is what I see is like rainfall versus runoff depths. So that is where I have an issue a bit. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. You can, sorry, let me share
Okay.
my screen.
Okay, there is a recommendation from other, Muhammad Salah Yassin is insisting. So maybe still we have few minutes. Maybe he suggesting to give you a chance for you just to share your screen and give you recommendation because we are having one gap of maybe one guy is not showing up. So Asad, I will give you just share your screen and just give your recommendation just within a couple of like 2 minutes maximum.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. You see.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, you can go through your recommendation.
Yeah. Okay. Based on result of suitability map, it's recommended that for better accurate and prices identification of potential surface runoff harvesting site, spatial data with the fine scale should be used. We need to use a small scale because you see the runoff or the CN used large scale. Okay. And also the socioeconomic here, not consistency, were not considered in this study, like distance and people is live there. In we need to also to consider socioeconomic in this study and need to be supplied firstly in more details for realistic implementation of rainwater harvesting. Further research is recommended to validate the combined map over different location. And the last one, the location of the rainwater harvesting structure should be such that it should get enough quantity of water and should be either very near nor too far from settlement and agriculture.
Thank you. Thank you very much. So now, if there's no question, now we are moving. Thank you very much. I said it once more. Now we are moving to the next section of our webinar, that is a panel discussion. So we have panel discussion for around 20 minutes. So here we have, we will take all the presenter as a panelist, but we also have Dr. David Solomon from CGIR. He agreed to serve as as a panel in the past panelist. Dr. David, are you there? Is he there or not?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah, okay, okay, thank you very much. Okay, just I want to know whether you are there or not, so just, okay, we have a panel discussion. So the objective of this panel discussion is to help stimulate thought and discussion on clarifying thinking and triggering an exchange of viewpoints among you guys of different experts in this important field and the critical research areas. We have two guiding questions. So the first one is, how are countries working to minimize climate disaster risk? And second one is, what are the challenges and opportunities for climate disaster risk management in the Nile Basin? So we have 6 speakers. So maybe I will go through one by one, just give you a bit of time, maybe 3 minutes for each, or depending on, so you can just give your view on those. So I give bios for all speakers. So now we have a new panelist, which is Dr. Dawi Salamon. Dr. Salamon is a regional program lead for East and Southern Africa, leading an Ethiopian country program leader working on accelerating impact of CGIAR climate research for Africa. Program he is based in early office here in Addis Ababa. He also holds an associate professor position as an adjunct at the College of Agriculture and Life Science, a School of Integrated Plant Science, Crop and Soil section of Cornell University in USA. Thank you for making time to be part of this panel discussion, Dr. Dawi Salamon. Now, maybe I'll start with you, Dr. Dawi, just to give your view. How are countries working to minimize climate disaster risks, and what are the challenges and opportunities for climate risk management in the Nile Basin in general?
Okay, good afternoon. I'm not Dawit, but Dawit assigned me to attend this meeting. My name is Yosef Amha from the United Nations Economic Commission for Africa. But since we are working with ECRA, I can intervene with your question. And in order to, based on the presentations that we have heard earlier and ECRA's intervention in different countries, there are some possibilities to work with countries to minimize the risk of climate change on agricultural sectors, and ECRA is working with different countries by developing various decision support tools in order to advise policymakers to make a relevant decision based on the available and up-to-date climate information services. And also ECRA is working with countries to help them in minimizing climate risks by forging different partnerships from national to regional and continental level. And with this, some of you may not aware about the ECRA, and the ECRA is a project funded by World Bank and working with different CGIAR groups, including IOMI in Zambia. So with its intervention, it tries to minimize climate risks by developing various support tools on ag advisory services and also on early warning system, and also on the this crop capability prediction models based on the subseasonal to seasonal climate forecasts given by the regional climate centers. So there are some opportunities here we have. There are different organizations who are working in a silo, but ECRA tries to bring them in a partnership, and it tries to coordinate some of the institution in CG, in UN, like WMO, World Meteorology Organization, and others, so that with that partnership, we are trying to help millions of farmers in order to get climate information services and climate smart agriculture in order to adapt and form resilience in those areas. So I think let me stop here, and based on the question, I can try to tackle that.
Okay, thanks so much, Dr. Yosef. So I think you raised a very important point. In the past, we were working, different organizations working in silos. Now, because of ACRA, now there's more of coordination. So I think that's good opportunity as well. Now I will pose the same question to Dr. Naga. You can have like 5 or 4 minutes just to give us your overview or opinion how the country is working to minimize climate disaster risks and the challenge and opportunity for climate disaster risk management in the Nile Basin. Especially you are working a lot in the water accounting and also remote sensing, early warning, all kind of things. So maybe just give us some overview about these 2 guiding questions.
Right. Thank you, Dr. Girma. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you very well.
Okay. So I'll give you my perspective, my take on this. What at IMI, what we believe is that we need to bring in digital innovation and tools. And as Abdul Karim has identified or mentioned, we need to take these tools forward to the end stakeholders, and then so that they can actually make some data-driven decisions. So right now, the challenge is that the data is not available, the tools are not available, and then there's a lot of uncertainty around the tools. Most of these tools we use Earth observation data, which comes with inherently with some kind of an uncertainties and issues. So that we are sorting out at IMI. We are trying to identify the most reliable data sets. We are looking into different data sets and then identifying for each region which are the best data sets that we can use, and then we are using those data sets, reliable data sets, into modeling work that we do. We also need to look into forecasting. Not only just with water accounting, we're trying to create a baseline information, but countries and regions and river basin organizations should also invest in Earth observation data and modeling. And then we have some examples, some illustrations coming out of our work within the DIWASA, where we are implementing short-term forecasting models for understanding drought risk and then also flood risks in the region. So with the climate change, the frequency of droughts and floods have increased, and we have seen that in our evidence in the past and in more recent time. So use of these tools and tools not that are too technical, but that are easy to use and very user friendly. So these tools are being developed, and then the countries and then the regional organizations should invest their time and skill development, especially in terms of bringing these tools into their decision making. The another aspect we are working on is, as was mentioned, that different organizations are working in silos, but also river basin organizations, government agencies, they do not consider the competing water demands. We have seen this time and again in different river basins, that basin development organizations and basin development activities are focused on certain aspect, and then they ignore the other aspects happening within the basin. Let's say irrigation development, the impact of the irrigation development on the downstream water users, environmental water requirement, e-flow assessments is usually ignored. And then the same way, there is a lot of transboundary basin transfers happening, and the impact on other water users or multi-sectoral water users is not taken into consideration. So there is another effort within IWMI where we are actually doing integrated water sources management, integrating water accounting tools with water allocation models or the hydrologic models, integrating that with the flood forecasting models. We're trying to bring in digital twins for the river basins, where we can actually bring all the digital tools required for a river basin, and then provide a complete understanding to the national agencies, for the ministries of water resources and other agencies that manage these river basins or water within the river basins. So we are combining these tools to make it more user friendly, and also provide more integrated information on these river basins. I think this is the direction to take, because The climate change is going to bring a lot of uncertainty in terms of water availability and distribution and frequency. I think we need to empower the end stakeholders and the water managers with these digital tools so that they can make some informed decisions. I'll stop there. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Naga. That's really helpful. Okay. Now I will invite the next speaker, Ms. Tendo. Are you there? So you can give us your perspective from the case study that you did in the Cape Town as well as other areas. You may just give your perspective or view on how countries working really need to work to minimize climate disaster risks that relate to the drought or floods, whatever. And what are the challenges and opportunities for climate and disaster risk management in the Nile Basin? So what are the opportunities and what are also a challenge or the constraints with respect to Nile Basin countries?
Okay, thank you. I hope I'm audible and clear.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. I will mention just one central theme that, based on my perspective concerning the Nile Basin. I saw that in the case study in Cape Town, but I'll link it to the Nile Basin and this theme for this webinar. And it concerns the small-scale farmers or the community. Small-scale farmers are still under the community. And this is presented as a challenge, something that I see as a challenge in terms of solving climate change, because the small-scale farmers tend to be forgotten about. Most times we think of things on a large scale. Let's say the largest largest people with the largest farms and the like, but our main backbone is actually the many small-scale farmers. So mine is more of what are we doing? And I guess I'm welcome to answers from the other panelists with more experience on what are we doing to help the small-scale farmers along the Nile basins faced with challenges like changing pests and disease patterns that affect their crops based on climate change, or other things where it's beyond their control in terms of climate change and they're recommended to try out different variations of crops. And yet a number of the small-scale farmers do not have the financial means to implement the number of solutions that we present. I'm not sure, is that clear?
Yes, that's clear. So maybe your central point is around small-scale farmers, why they are not given the required attention, maybe more focused is on large-scale farmers who have the capacity to build their own system, whereas the small-scale farmers, they don't have enough resources to develop, and this is what's left for the community. I think that's what you want to say, yeah?
Yes, thank you.
Yeah. Anything else in terms of like what the country do need to, apart from small-scale irrigation in other areas? You presented like the case studies in Cape Town on working on great water sources. So do you consider using like different sources of water or integrated use of or diversifying water sources in the Nile Basin, especially to come to maybe, I'm just brainstorming.
Sorry, I beg your pardon. Are you asking for recommendations from my end?
Yeah, we are looking for your opinion or general comments on what else do you need to consider apart from the small-scale irrigations. That's like.
Oh, okay. So my second comment, my whole theme is about the people, the users. So if I'm to first take it from my presentation, why we wanted a simplified tool is because when you actually look at the countries that the Nile Basin comprises of, a number of the people on ground need the knowledge that's available. We have great knowledge that's being shared in the webinars. I actually think the keynote speaker, Dr. Abdul Karim, mentioned this, that we have great knowledge being presented, but how practical is it to the actual people in the countries and in the community? So my recommendation would be to find ways to get our different tools and different knowledge to a practical day-to-day life scale.
Thanks so much. Anything else? Okay, thank you, Tendo. So now we'll give a chance to Dr. Harwa Ahmed just to reflect the two questions, what countries need to do to minimize climate disaster risks, as well as what are the challenge opportunities for climate disaster risk management in the Nile Basin countries. Dr. Harwa Ahmed, are you there? Is he not there? Dr. Harwa Ahmed. Hello? Yeah. Okay, so I think he has other appointments, so he maybe is jumping out at the moment. So maybe I will just give a floor to Mr. Asadik Mohammed. Can you reflect on this? You did maybe this multi-criteria decision analysis, and then maybe you can just give your opinion or overview or your understanding how countries in general be prepared to minimize climate risk, and also the challenge opportunities for climate risk management or reduction in the Nile Basin in general. Am I audible? Hello?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, we can hear. Okay, thanks, Dr. Mudassir. So, Mr. Asadig, are you there?
Yes.
Okay, just can you give us your perspective on these two, the panel discussions on how countries need to work to minimize climate disaster risk, and also what are the opportunities and the challenges for climate risk reduction or management in the Nile Basin in general?
Okay. Okay, let's start from criteria were selected. I selected only 5 criteria. We need to if you want to update it, or to get more suitable site for rainwater harvesting, we need to add the environmental impact issues and also climate change, because the rainfall in the last 5 years, there is a risk for the region, the Eastern Nile region. We need to also to make sure the rainfall data updated for last years. And I think this only 5. We need to update or added 5 or 6 criteria to make a fine result, or more small scales.
Yeah, I understand you want to make more robust decision maybe identification of water harvesting pond. You need to consider not only the biophysical criteria, but you need to consider other criteria.
Yeah,
Also climate change and others.
Climate change, yeah.
Yeah, that's really important. But apart from the water harvesting pond, whatever, though, do you have anything else, that you can recommend just to minimize the drought or flood risk, whatever? And you can just mention some, if you have any, on challenges and opportunities for climate risk reduction in the Nile Basin. Any thoughts on this?
Okay, no. Only my recommendation.
Okay, thanks, Mr. Asate. So now I will invite maybe Dr. Mudassir to give his perspective on this panel discussion, how our country is working to minimizing climate disaster, and you guys are working also as a Nile Basin a lot in the climate change area. So what are the opportunities and the challenges that you are facing in the climate risk reduction in the Nile Basin? Maybe your perspective on Dr. Mudassir or anyone else from NBI.
Thank you very much, Dr. Girma. From our side, in the area of climate risk reduction, we developed and we finalized recently climate proofing guideline. This is a manual which can help all the stakeholders over the Nile Basin to support them on calculating like the climate risk, and also on the same time to climate proof our large infrastructures here on the ground, and also the planned large infrastructures. So this is one of the important projects. We did a lot of activities under this project, and we recently finalized and updated also our climate proofing guideline, and it should be disseminated also soon. In the area also of climate change, we did also like several activities. One of them is the drought monitoring and forecasting tool. It can support also even those who work in like small scale, because it covers the entire Nile Basin, and you can extract the information even at a specific point or a specific location. You can even extract the information and tailor also your own information. So this is another tool which is operational now, and any stakeholders over the Nile Basin can utilize that tool. We are now also refining one of the tools which can hopefully support in this area of climate adaptation is our Nile Basin River Flow Forecasting System. We are currently refining that system to make it like a robust system and reliable system. These are the key activities that we are doing somehow also related to this session, but we have some other climate change activities which are not directly linked to this session.
Okay.
Thank you very much, Dr. Girma. I'm back to you.
Okay, thanks to Dr. Mudassir. That's really helpful just to know what is NBI is doing in terms of climate change adaptation in the region. Maybe if I invite Dr. Abdulkarim to give his perspective. I know Dr. Abdulkarim has a burning question. How can we translate research into practice? I think that is the point where we are really stuck. So research needs to be translated into practice and needs to be grounded on, otherwise it's very difficult to make impact. Dr. Abdulkarim, just can you give us, you already give us a lot in the keynote speak, but if you just summarize in the few key message in the panel, that would be helpful.
Okay. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Dr. Girma. Hope you can hear me.
Yes.
Okay, very good. Yes, if you just imagine, just reflect on the number of types of tools we have heard about in this presentation, and the spectrum of issues they try to address, for example, then projected into all the other number of projects we are all working on through research institutions or NBI and other institutions, where quite many of them are being developed and often capacity being built, usually in countries where, the geographies we are working on. But on the other side, if you really go and assess, for example, to what extent these tools are being used operationally, well, the result is not satisfying. At least for me, there's a lot to be done. So people might say it's because of a lack of capacity or lack of finance, I don't know, whatever reason. But I think I try to categorize the factors into what I call push and pull factors. And the push factor is usually there from research institutions, intergovernmental organizations like NBI, because tools are developed, databases are developed, guidelines, which Dr. Modesti was mentioning about, the climate proofing guidelines, etc., are being developed, given to the countries, capacity building, training being conducted. The other pull factor, in my view, is the demand from the end user side. I'm not saying there's no demand, but I think there should be a stronger demand and a stronger engagement. Engagement and impetus to really apply those things into practical problems that they deal with. Probably, in my view, if I have to prioritize, that's where I really want to give big emphasis, working with governments, working with NGOs sometimes, and even local communities, to help them really use those tools to solve practical problems. So if you give a training on how to use a tool, that is one type of training. But if you really train people how to really apply them, that's another type of training. So then really we have to push, create that kind of effective demand coming from the end users, so that we are also challenged, because we're not just developing the tools and just throwing it there, but rather we also have to apply it, help them to apply it, really help them to solve problems. I think probably that could be one way for translating all these, products, tools, knowledge products, databases, guidelines, etc., into really practical application and to really inform decisions. And this is one thing. The other, in my view, thing that goes together with it is those who make decisions in our countries, they need to be aware of all these tools. So usually trainings are done at technical level with technicians, and the moment those technicians go back home to their ministries, they will be again engaged with their daily work. Probably in some of the cases has very little to do with the kind of training they had, but potentially those tools could also be used for different types of activities and projects and so on and so forth. So I think raising awareness at decision maker level would also, in my view, could help as well, because otherwise, those who make decisions, because they also make decisions on resource allocation or on staff recruitment, for example, or where staff time allocation, etc. For this reason, those who make this, I'm not saying ministers, but maybe legal department head levels, for example, they need to be aware what's available, which will really make life easy for solving different types of problems, so that the technicians will get the necessary support and mandate from those decision makers. So then the other is to make the tools really accessible, in my view. So, and the capacity building is not only training, should also be institutional capacity building as well. The fourth one is an entirely different type of problem when it comes to community level. So if you really want information to be used at a community level, for example, to improve farming practices or agricultural management practices. That's entirely in a different space. I think we have very little experience on that one. But I think that's really very important. I mean, for me, it will be a game changer if you really make farmers use information to decide when to irrigate, how much to irrigate their fields, for example. That will really revolutionize in our countries, how agriculture is being managed. So let me stop here. I mean, these are some of the thinkings I have. I mean, I don't call them maybe recommendations, but that's really what I think might work. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Abkarim. I think this is really aligned with what you give us a keynote speech. So these are different scale at different level. So we have like maybe community pilot level, we have like catchment level, river basin level, and also national level. So I think, and also the information, I think need to be downscaled to the community level. So I'm really interested on the last point, which you say like, okay, these tools training can be given to the technical people in the ministry or whatever, but then the decision makers may not be aware of what tools is available and what is used for, because the decision makers need to be aware of the benefit of this tool. So otherwise we not be out of the like we continue our traditional way of doing things. And also one thing which catch my mind is like how we can improve community level. That is really important. Whatever we do, we can do at river basin level. You can do some kind of planning, water or management, whatever. But this needs to be trickled down to the community level at the grassroots level, where we need to change the lives of these smallholder farmers. If you want to impact the smallholder farmers, what are the approach that we need to use? I think that's where we have a challenge. You can do a model, you can do some scenarios, you can do whatever, given all the uncertainties, you can do many scenarios, then you just produce a result. Then you say like, so how that information is usable for the just for the planning, whether crop planning or maybe irrigation or whatever. So I think that is where we need to more work, or even the community level. Do the community have this awareness or the desire to know more, or they are the most vulnerable to climate change and as well. So those are the things we need to just look at to make research more practical. So this is also needs more awareness raising, as well as demonstrating benefits of the research to the community at the grassroots level. So those are the things. So all the up and the demand side, also the push and pull factor that you mentioned. Yeah, you can have like a nice model and a nice maybe database, as well as maybe manuals, but that need to be used. Otherwise, if it is just shelved there, so it's not easy, may not be applicable. So I think all the points are really very important. Thank you very much, Dr. Abdul Karim. We still have maybe 10 minutes or 5. So any I think, do any additional questions or from the panel or? Okay. Yeah, I just I have one question. It's not for the panelists, but for Dania. They said you have did very good work based on your experience on the Google Earth engine, but based on your experience, how reliable is a good Google Earth engine to be used for decision making? Just give you.
Hello. Yeah, I said that it's after identifying crop types with the library, after doing or building the library for Eastern Nile Basin. So it can be used after that classification to identify or calculate crop areas. So you can identify the crop type and then the crop areas. So it can be done automatically using softwares like other remote sensing softwares using the signature to classify the crop types and to do the grouping of crops. So it can be done easier. And yeah, it's the Google Earth is a really good geospatial analysis platform. And there are some researches about how it's the accuracy and the error in using Google Earth Engine. And in some researches, the error is not more than 2%. So yeah, it's easy, and you can download free data, a lot of free satellite images in different dates, in variable dates.
Yeah, thanks, Diana. I think did I give you a chance to speak on the two questions, the guiding question? I doubt, yeah. No, so you can go ahead, because sorry for that. If you can just give your perspectives on how countries need to work to minimize climate risks and challenge and opportunities, and how this Google Earth engine can maybe make impact in maybe disaster risk reduction. You can give your.
I think in my research, using Google Earth engine can be used in governmental offices. So it's easy, it's free, and you can download a lot of data, and it's also reliable, and it's accurate to monitor the schemes, the agricultural schemes, and to monitor and to identify exactly crop types and areas cultivated. Yeah, it's accessible, it's easy, it's free, and it helps governmental for decision making, and to calculate the actual amount of water that can be given to each farm or a small farm.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Diana. So I think we heard the panelists. We'd like to thank all the panelists. Just I think we are almost 5 minutes to our time. Just to give you a wrap up and a key message from the panel discussion. We had a very nice case studies from different case studies presented in the panel discussion. Everyone exchanged their view, and also from their experience what needs to be done in terms of climate change adaptation and climate risk reduction. So some of the points are more of related to like information service. Information needs to be trickled down, or information has to be reached who need the information really. So up-to-date climate information is important. Early warning system, seasonal forecasting, that's really helpful. What Joseph mentioned, and also it's not. You don't need to work like in silos, but it's good to work like in integrated or together in different organizations. You need to work together to bring things, and maybe from different perspectives. Climate change is a cross-cutting issue, so we need to encompass like health or water. It's like a multidisciplinary approach. And also, Dr. Naga mentioned like bringing innovation tools. Innovation tools are really important, and then this need to be reached to the stakeholder in need. So, and also there is a lot of work has been going on in UNI side, in the water accounting, and also in other projects to re-innovate or make data more accessible for the user. That's really helpful. So that is something which is very important for climate change adaptation. That has to be renovated, that has to be filled, and also make available for the end users. And also there are a lot of technical documents and the models. These models need to be like easy, user-friendly, and the information that can be extractable should be easily developed by the users and also maybe working in silos in terms of like sectoral approach is maybe what one of, as Naga said, maybe considering like one sector is competition. He said river-based organizations do not consider competing water demand among the different sectors. So that needs to be really important to consider. This will be solved by working together rather than in a silo. Different sectors need to be coordinated in their management or the planning. Of course, climate change giving large uncertainties, so we need to, we given this a large uncertainty, need to make a decision in order to adapt climate change. So for that, data forecasting, all kind of things are maybe helpful. Scenario analysis and others may be helpful. Attend also mentioned like small scale farmers need to be given like the more focus, because as of now, like the focus is more large scale producer who has the capacity to do things, but smaller scale farmers are left for the communities who are really struggling with their financial, otherwise also capacity wise. So we need to find a right tools to make the things working for this smallholder farmer or small scale irrigators. And also, we heard also from Dr. and others, is like there are a lot of work in progress in the Nile Basin country, in the Nile Basin Initiative, develop climate-proof guideline, drought and forecasting tools, and I think this information needs to be communicated or disseminated. Users should know what's available in the web. So that is something which is very important. And Mr. Asad also mentioned to make multi-criteria decision may not be useful by itself. It needs to be integrated with other factors like climate change, socio-economic factors need to be integrated. And you heard Dr. Abdul Karim making a very good concluding remarks regarding to the difference. He said tools are already there, but they are not really used. So the reason he mentioned the pull and the pull factor, why they are not used and why this is really applicable. There are models have been developed, these supports have been developed, Nile Basin has developed a lot of tools, IMI has developed a lot of tools. These tools need to be used by the communities. So I think those are the my wrap-ups or key messages that I took from the panel discussion. Now I will hand over to Dr. Mudassir and Dr. Karim, I think, to close this session. Dr. Mudassir, over to you first.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Dr. Girma. I would like to thank IMI today for this excellent moderation and also leading the morning and afternoon sessions. We appreciate very much the effort you put today in these two important sessions. In the morning, we had a session about climate change adaptation in the smallholder farming sector. And now in the afternoon, we had another interesting session about applying analytical and monitoring tools to improve climate change adaptation in the agricultural sector. And I would like to thank especially our moderator, Dr. Girma. And I would like also to thank Dr. Abdul Karim, who did a lot of effort also behind the scene and also to give the keynote speech in the morning and also in the afternoon. I would like to thank also all our panelists for their informative presentations, and allow me also to thank our team here, the team who work behind the scene, Patrick, Marushka, and Suede, and also the experts who are attending with us, Vincent and our young professionals here. Thank you very much. Back to you, Dr. Abdul Karim, for closing. Thank you.
Yeah, colleagues, Dr. Mudassir, you have already summarized it very nicely. I just want to say thank you very much, NBI, for this opportunity, all the presenters, Dr. Girma for the moderation, and then, I don't know, moderating or moderation. And also the panelists, Dr. Yosef as well. So Dr. David in his absence, he already arranged with Dr. Joseph. I really thank you very much, and think of yourself as members of the community of practice on zone knowledge and the tools. I hope the interaction will continue bilaterally or in a group in the future, so that we will have tools that really better uptaken by our countries. So with this short remark, I really want to thank everybody and goodbye.
Yeah, thank you everyone. Thank you all speakers and panelists for your contribution, and audience for your attendance and active engagement. I think we can close this session. Thank you everyone. Good night.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Thank you.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.